Boa tarde! Vamos começando. Hi!
Oh,
Good afternoon, good night, good evening. Let's start one more episode of the Masters of the Tech Universe, which I just did a small mistake, started talking in Portuguese.
no. That is no mistake. That is a bug. That's why we started to talk about it. You did
Internationalization bugs.
exactly.
Otávio, how are you doing today? All good? All good?
Oh,
Excited to be
everything's
here?
amazing. It's Monday. What else? No, the day that you can do a lot of deploys.
That's a good point. And
That's a good
today
point.
I'd like to tell you that we have a guy who is, first of all, he's a Java champion. He writes all
Oh,
sorts of like deep dives on his blog around Java and Java coding best practices about bugs. But can we really talk? Do we really have so much stuff to talk about bugs? Isn't it simply as just I find a bug, I fix a bug? Isn't it that simple?
oh
Do
no,
we
it's
really
hard.
need this guy to be here talking with us today?
Oh yeah. Oh, you mentioned about he is a Java champion, right? And we received a recommendation from Venka Sullivan. The Venka Sullivan, yes. Right now he is from Europe, so he's Brazilian, half European from Dublin. He's an amazing guy who went to several temple bars a couple of times, right? And beyond that, he went to several amazing conferences to talk about bugs.
He's an international speaker. Yeah, I'm
National
excited to have him
speaker.
here. Let me bring him to stage.
Welcome, Rafael De Nero. Woo!
Yeah.
Rafa, thank you so much for accepting our invite to be here today.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here with you guys. Thanks a lot for the invitation. I'm really happy to be here.
Rafa, we have some tough questions prepared here for you about bugs.
Here
And
it
I
comes.
hope you're ready to just have some discussions with Otavio because, and I'll warn you of something. Sometimes, if you notice that he's just like doing this on his chin,
Yeah.
be aware something is coming.
Okay.
Something's processing.
Bring it
Sometimes
on.
good, sometimes not good. But anyway,
So let's start with something that we were starting to discuss here on the backstage. The differences in between a bug and a technical debt. Isn't it the same thing? Like for you, do you feel it's like the same thing? Do you consider a technical debt, a bug in the software?
Well, not really, because a bug it could be a functional requirement problem. It could be like a wrong if. It could be a wrong looping. So it can be many things that doesn't correspond to the business requirements. So a bug is something that the user is not expecting. It can be some problem in the UI. It can be some problem in a query, for example. So it can be many things that is not expected by the user. But a technical debt, on the other hand, is more related to code problems. So structural code problems, bad architecture, no standards in the code, which means that it's harder to maintain the code like this. So it's better to have a standard so that every developer can follow it. And then it's possible to create a high quality code where every developer knows how to work in that project.
And now that
okay.
you
So
said,
basically,
please go on, Otavio.
uh, what I understood for you, technical debt is a nightmare from the business perspective. Oh, sorry. A
For
bug
the
is
technical.
a yeah. Bug is a business nightmare. A technical debt is a developer nightmare, right?
Exactly. Yes, that's exactly it. Otavio summarized in like very few words. Exactly it.
And with that explanation, I just noticed that other people can insert bugs on the system, not only the developer. Because if the person who actually gets the prereqs are getting it wrong and writing it down wrong, then we can deliver bugs on the software, like, right? If the prereqs are not correct, that will be considered a bug by the end user. So yeah, that's kind of complex. Anyway, Otávio.
And sometimes the decision is so bad, and the people say that's a bug, right? Uh,
Exactly.
and that's happened every time. So here in Brazil, we had the fund to help poor people, and they decided to go to start the CPF, the Brazilian document that's supposed to be an ID as integer. And guess what? There's several CPF that start with zeros, and there is validation behind that. And that zero in front matters. And guess what? A huge bug that looks like to developer bug. However, that was a business decision.
It was a business decision to have it as an integer.
Yes, that was. That's
Here,
weird, but it's sometimes happen. Sometimes what I saw before, like the business people decided to use specific technology. They don't care about anything else. Like imagine right now we are a company A who has an amazing product and make a deal with company B to use your product. And you can make a huge deal. You can promote your product self, and you talk to your developers. Hey, I don't care about solution. You need to use that because I'm gonna show that solution on a huge conference in that year to promote my brand mark. And sometimes it's happen. Indeed, it's happened a lot of times.
I have a question here before you bring yours, Otávio. Rafa, do you work? One question before the actual question. The software that you work today, like the third-party softwares, is it open source? Like, can you see the code if you need?
So
And let me explain why am I asking this. So basically, what do you do when you know that the bug is not in your code, but actually in the third-party framework, library, whatever? How do you deal with this?
oh, okay, I got the question now. So well, there are a couple of options. Either you can choose another library, or you can even create a pull request, but it would take usually a while to get approved and get merged. So I think for companies, for business companies, I think it's more common to just choose another library because that would be the faster way around. But if you see the code and if you can fix it really quickly, why not create a pull request? And even if you're not using it, it's good for your career as well.
Yeah, sometimes not easy to just replace the library itself. Think about, Spring. And you decide you find a bug in Spring. How can you replace the whole Spring library from your project?
Yeah, that wouldn't be
You
possible.
sit and cry. I think this is when hiring enterprise companies like to just have the support for it matters, because when using like big frameworks like Spring, it might be tough, right? To just, I don't know how the community is around it. Like if you submit a pull request, how quick it gets merged in there. But yeah, Otávio even ran away just because we were talking about Spring. So we have a question here. So from Mugen, I don't know how to say his name, but what is our plan to catch bugs during code review when you're not familiar or confident with the business logic? Do you have any like technique?
Well, that's a very good question. What is your plan to catch bugs during code review when you're not familiar or confident with the business logic? Well,
Yeah.
what you could do, you could pull the code in your machine and run the unit test, for example, and you could see if the output is the expected, it's what you are expecting. And but it's really hard if you don't know exactly what should be the output. I think you should have an idea. Maybe you can ask to the person who created the pull request what is the expected outcome. Maybe you can ask for context on the pull request, and maybe that would help you to know better if there is a bug or not.
Maybe a pet program. I
Yeah.
mean, if you have no idea about the business logic, so Karina knows. Hey, Karina, join me and you can review together. So Karina can share the knowledge about the business and I can show my perspective about the code, right? Because sometimes not just about the business logic itself. For example, if the parameter might be new, what happened? What should I return? And what happened if I return an invalid inputs? I don't know, some invalid credit card number, something like that. What should I do? Right? So the I enjoy the pair program sometimes. No, in everything. I don't believe in silver bullets. However, in this point, makes sense to me.
I don't
Yeah.
think I would do that to try to find bugs in business logic, because this should be covered with unit tests. But if it's not, then it's hard to catch. Like, you won't ask, like, should you be giving 10% discount instead of 15? We can't know that, right? So I think I would do like Rafa said. I just pull the code and just run it, try to test, or have it in a CI/CD pipeline to test it. But it's tough to find
Yeah,
just by
but the
looking.
product is alive, right? The product is alive. Sometimes there is some condition that nobody knows before it happened. And if you have no idea, you can be the user and do the tough stuff and find out.
Exactly. Yeah. You could
Rafa.
also run the code locally and test on your machine. Go on, Karina. Sorry.
Yeah, because we are like talking about this stuff, and it is pretty common for us to have to implement exceptions in our code in order to deal with like unexpected scenarios. Could you just talk a little bit more about how you handle exceptions when you are dealing with it? Like, do you have any technique that you would like to share with people who are watching?
Yes, I created an article, 11 mistakes that Java developers make when using exceptions.
Ooh, is this in your website? Let me share it with the people here.
Yes. Uh, and basically, what I would do, I would create a more generic exception, let's say business exception, and then create exceptions that are related to a core business of the project. So, for example, if you have a big module of a discount, I would create, for example, a discount exception, and I would have just a couple more of strategic exceptions because I don't like the idea of having thousands of exceptions. I would
Like,
prefer.
you're going to query a person and you don't find a person, and then it's just like, would you create like a person not found exception? Because you can get to that level if you just drill down the thing, right?
Exactly. So I would be more strategic. I would create exceptions for discount and then create some other exceptions that are very important to the business about discount. And I would avoid creating an exception for every single situation. I don't think it's like you can put a very good log message on your exception as well. You don't need to create thousands of exceptions.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. And I've been in a couple of projects, and I've missed this practice. Like I feel that people should use this more, because when you are dealing with problems in production, if you just have it like there on the stack trace, loud and clear, just here is the problem, then it's easier to the person who's trying to find the issue and for the developer to fix it. So yeah, totally agree.
Exactly. And log message on the session are very important, and we should be very clear why we are throwing this exception, because like you said, if there is an error on production, we can easily identify what's happening.
Okay. Also, Karina mentioned something about exception. Let me do the next question. Is there any good way to do a bug tracker, like log, something like that? What you
But
usually do?
Bug tracker, like a bot that just keep on listening the logs? What do you mean by bug tracker?
Something bad
Automatic?
happened. No magic. Something bad happened. What should I do? Where should I do?
Oh, okay.
How can I track that bug?
how can you track that bug? Well, it's not exactly a bug tracker, but I used a lot the PMD tool, which would say if your code is good. For example, if there is 100 lines of 100 lines in your method, for example, the PMD tool would say, okay, your method has a lot of lines, you should reduce that. For example, if there is a lot of nested loopings, a lot of nested conditions, I think that would be that is very harmful to the code. And PMD in that case, I don't know if it is exactly a bug tracker,
But
but it
let's
helps.
my system, like I am the user. Oh my God, my system is not working. And then she calls the ops team. Hey, my system is not working. What is going on? And they will just grab the logs and send to you, the architect. The system in production is down. Where would you start? Like to try to find the error there. And I'm not talking about like JVM out of memory errors, not this type of thing, but like I cannot insert a person here in this form, this type of thing of weird, unexpected behaviors.
Oh yeah. Well, nowadays with microservices, there are many log tools. For example, Datadog would help with that, or Prometheus. You could check on those tools if you want to go deeper into it. So I would say that logs, like if you have good logs, you can figure out what's happening.
It makes sense. Yeah, totally. Would you go like, please go on, Otavio.
Okay.
Yeah, just because I don't want to interrupt.
No. The point is, we talk about somebody review your code that has no idea about the business logic, right? And Gabriel did the opposite. What happened if I know the logic? How can I avoid this kind of bugs on my review process?
Okay, so he knows the logic.
He knows the business logic.
Okay,
when you are doing code review,
he knows the business logic, but doesn't know about the code. Is that it?
You know,
no.
So
you know the logic. Like, sorry, go ahead, Karina.
We are working on the same project, and okay. we were both on the prereqs meeting. And now I submitted a pull request, and you have to review my code. So, do you try to find errors on the business logic too, or you just try to catch bugs and that code technical debt on this code that I just submitted? And you know the business logic. Is this the type of thing that you analyze and try to prevent on the code review?
Oh, of course. If I see a business logic error, of course I would analyze that, because that's the whole point. We want to ship code so that we can use the functionalities of the system. So for sure, I would say okay, this is the business logic. Let's change it, because that's not correct.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. Now I'll bring another situation for you, Rafa. We got the approval, sorry, to do a refactoring in our code. This can add some bugs to the code. Do you think it's worth the try? Like, should we try to refactor something that is working and maybe introduce some bugs in there? So
That's a very odd. That's a very good question as well. I think. Well, I'm gonna give you the classic answer. It depends.
it depends.
Yeah, but I'm gonna give you some cases. Let's suppose that this code is bringing a lot of problems to developers, and developers are taking 2 weeks to 1 month to solve one bug or to add one feature. I think in that case, it's very useful to refactor because it's really bringing, like it's costing to the company. So I would encourage the company to refactor the code and make the code simpler, more maintainable. I think in that case is better. But if it is some code that doesn't really need many changes, and if it is like very, very, very bad, which would take a lot of time to refactor the code, I wouldn't recommend because the company would lose a lot of money, I think. So I think we should balance. We should analyze if it is really worth it. But there is, for example, if you have some legacy code with old technology, you can also be harmed because developers who are good won't be willing to work for you. They will be willing to work with cutting edge technologies. And if they see that the company has projects with Java 5 and struts and very old stuff, they won't be willing to work with that. So in this case, I think it's a wise decision because otherwise you're going to have to pay more to developers. They won't be so motivated. They will be like just doing the work. And so I think there are a lot of things to consider, but refactoring is always very important. If we don't refactor, the code will rot. So
Yeah, the pen is our silver bullet, right? Sometimes don't need to change the code if that work.
yeah,
And that's true. And we as developer has a huge ego to think, okay, let's make the perfect code. On my
especially
perspective,
as an architect, I've seen architects that they just put like in a public sector, they put a sonar and they just say, if your project has technical debts above X%, it won't go to production. So it's just like, what?
yeah. Yeah, I saw that happen sometimes before as well. My whole point is it's impossible. If you go to the most beautiful projects, OpenJDK, Linux kernel, and something like that, sometimes hard to make the beautiful codes as possible, right? How can you? My question is there any kind of way to avoid that? To make the code perfect? Yes, you have. However, it's gonna take a lot of time to make that code perfect.
I
And
can just do
sometimes,
Control C, Control V in all the codes in Java challengers, and then it will be perfect, right, Donero?
oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
Hi. Awesome. So, Deonero, me again, Otávio, me again. I just want to use Deonero here today. I can leave just a little bit of him for you later.
Okay.
Debugging. Sometimes we have those kinds of bugs that you cannot reproduce in your machine. You simply can't. When was the last time you debugged in production? Like, did you had to do this sometimes? Tell us a little bit about this situation.
The situation is very common. So what I used to do, I just use the production database, and that was it. with monolith projects. That's it.
Oh, so you just changed the database. You pointed to the production database in order to debug it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Or we can check the logs from a server, and then we can figure out where the
But
error is coming.
sometimes the logs are not enough, Del Nero. You know that.
Yeah. Yeah. Usually when the problem only occurs with production, it's data problem. There is something there in the database that might be corrupted. Some data which is is dirty. So this is usually the problem. But nowadays, with microservices and everything, I would replicate the production environment with Docker, for example.
Okay. I need to say that sometimes I just deploy application to put more log. You understand? Yeah, that's totally true, Karina. Sometimes
That is true.
logs are not enough.
Enable trace log, just forget it in production, trace enabled on the cloud. The bill will be up. The bill you have to pay for.
Yeah, but sometimes you need to check what's going on, right? So mostly when you talk about microservice, because you need to know the exact order in the exact flow the code is doing, and sometimes a nightmare.
Is it
And
possible to
clients are
debug
clients.
microservices, Otavio? Can we debug microservices? Like, do you have like 6 application and then you just set the breakpoint in all of it? How do you do that? You cannot do that, right?
Yeah, unfortunately you can. And you need to solve any kind of problem that you need that face and they appear to you. Basically, if you have the log stash, which can save your time, but sometimes the company decides to not use. You need to go machine to machine
Oh,
to check that, and it's happened. Unfortunately, that's happened mostly in legacy code. You have the option to use open tracing, where each request has an ID code, so you can start the flow and then go follow that the cat pipe grab that ID to follow the line with that information. Usually
yeah.
that's useful.
So yeah, with microservices, just it's not a silver bullet, and many companies implement microservice because the big companies just have it. So they don't really assess if it is really necessary, and it adds a huge complexity to the project, and it doesn't need to be microservice. So, for example, Otavio just mentioned a really good example. It adds a huge complexity to debug your code. You have to debug several microservices via log tracing, which is not like it's not as simple as a monolith, which you could simply debug your whole application and you could see the outputs. You could inspect your code, and with microservices, that's not possible. And other than that, with microservices, it adds a huge complexity with infrastructure. So developers have to know the backend, the front end, infrastructure, containers. They have to know everything. So it adds a huge complexity. It's not a silver bullet.
Yeah, I'm not complaining, right, about microservice right now. Yes, you have several
You
tools.
are not
I'm not
complaining.
complaining
Really?
this time. I'm not complaining.
Okay, that's news for me.
Yeah, that's totally new to us. The whole point is, yes, you have several tools that makes everything amazing when you decide to go to microservice or not decide to go. But sometimes the company decide to put microservice and forget to put that tool to make everything amazing. And I saw that happen a couple times. That's a nightmare to go in the machine, do the classical pipe grab, request a new request again to see the behavior, need to go into several machines
And
to
if the
catch
problem is just on the header, that's a nightmare to catch. Like you need to put something to catch. Like what is going on in the HTTP request? And oh my god, it can't get crazy.
well,
Yeah.
it's happened once with me when the issue was on the proxy.
Oh
And it
no.
was so hard to find that because for some reason he forgets the proxy missing the one parameter that was the language. And one people from and basically the client decided to use the language as region. Therefore, if the language was Japanese, it went to uh, Japanese server, Portuguese, Brazilian server, so on. Yes, that's a huge mistake. I know, but they decided to go this way. For sure, there's a Brazilian who lives in Dublin who could use this service. But
Yeah.
anyway, in general, most Brazilian live in Brazil. They go to that point, and the procs in that time missing the information about the language.
Yeah, I think the hardest part is to just try to find that this is the cause of the problem.
Yes.
Because okay, there's a bug in the communication. We don't know where to start. The bug is not in the code. It just doesn't work. So and then you get to drill down on this hardcore stuff using like these tools. I forgot the name. Wireshark to track the request, and it's just crazy. Yeah.
Yes. Sometimes it's crazy, but you need to know. You need to do. You need to know.
How?
And
Me again, Otavio. Me again, Otavio. Today I'm on fire. I
come
just need
on,
to ask
come on.
questions.
You are fine today. Go ahead.
Do you think that code that is not really good, like you don't have such readable code on that PR that someone sent you, it works, but it's not like it's a one-liner, you know, the one-liners codes that it's also in one single line, it does the thing, but maybe it could be like 7 lines that does the same thing and it's more easy to understand. Do you consider that an issue? Would you like be okay with code that is more complex, but it's not like that readable, but solves the problem? I don't know. What is your
Yeah,
opinion about this?
I understood the question. I think should balance because one line of code might be really, really confusing. Other developers might see this code and have no idea what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So I would balance. I would put, I don't know, maybe
But
4
if you
lines
think
of
like
code.
that, Rafa, you can do if in one line or if in like 4, if and else like 4 or 5 lines. Even the if can go into that direction. If you go like if you try to nossa, I forgot the word anyway.
Wrap, right?
Granularizar. So se for granularizando, anyway, let's just go back to English. So yeah, if you think like that, even the if can be a problem because it's like, oh but my junior developer will not get the if that is made in one-liner. I don't know.
Oh, but
Uh,
the ternary if is quite simple. It shouldn't
It
be
is.
complex for a junior developer.
yeah, but the code is not just about number of line, right? It's more about readable, make a readable code. Because sometimes instead of you have just for if else, if you decide to go to design partner with strategy, it's better, it's easier to test when you have one class with one condition than just one huge method with several if else conditions.
Yeah, there is the case of over-engineering as well. Sometimes developers use a design pattern when it's not really necessary.
Yeah.
This happens a lot. This happens a lot, and we should avoid complexity as much as possible. We should make the code simple and readable because design patterns does increase complexity, and we should use it very cautiously.
Yeah, that's true. I have one question to you, Rafa, because as Karina mentioned, sometimes hard to understand, right? Some code some hard to understand because I decided to go to just one line. However, my whole point here is think about it right now. I'm a Java developer who knows a lot about Java 7. And the company decided to go to Java 11 right now, and I have no idea about string. And the string API looks difficult to me because I have no idea about string API. What should I do in that condition? Should I avoid to use new feature to make it readable to everybody? Should I do any kind of training? What should I go? What should I do
You
on that
should
situation?
You should do
This is
some,
a tricky question, Rafa.
you should do the Java challengers with streams. Then you would learn streams. Yeah, but well, I would say that of course learning streams it's something that will take some time. I would suggest this developer to use normal loopings for some time until this developer really learns this new technique. But it doesn't mean like if you go to Java 11, doesn't mean that you have to use streams because Java is retrocompatible. You can use everything from Java 7 or Java 6 with no problem. So um, I would recommend just to use Java like Java 7 until you learn it. Unless there is someone to explain to you, then you could do pair programming with someone else that knows streams, and then you could learn more quickly. Because like I think it's very useful to do pair programming so that you can absorb the knowledge from this person who knows about streams, about optionals, about lambdas. That would be you would have a quick learn about those features, and you could also use that on your own.
This is an excellent point of view. Thank you for sharing it, Rafa.
Thank you. You're very kind.
Okay. Usually, in the end of the mass of universe, you have why not, right? And let's finish with that question. When should I not fix a bug or a technical debt?
Never had this question before in my life. Well, when should you not fix a bug?
Let's say you found a bug in Otávio's money API. Is there
No,
any
let's talk about the business perspective.
no, from the business perspective, it always needs to get fixed. If someone asks, peraí, amor. If someone asks, you need to get it fixed. It's not an option. But from like
And when it's become more expensive, I mean, what happened with if you spend like 10 days to fix one bug, where it just happened one single time on the month, or
that's
with just one client. I mean, if you had spent $10,000 to fix a bug to just one case that happened 1 year, does it make sense to fix it on the business perspective?
Yeah, I would say that it would be worth it to do it, but like you said, it might be expensive and it just happens once a year. So I would say that if you have time, like if like projects go through seasons, there are seasons that a project just stops because they are collecting requirements, they are restructuring everything. So maybe it would be wise to work on this bug, which is tricky, when you have some extra time in your company. Because whether or not, this bug will bring costs to the company over time. And so the cost might be low for now, but as the company grows, it might be a really high cost. So
Okay. I guess to me right now is a big issue because I'm talking English and everybody in the company can understand me right now. But I know a couple banks from Europe who knows the bug, and we can call that a familiar bug. But it's so expensive to fix that bug. It's just better to keep that alone and fix that manually because it's much more expensive to fix than keep that way.
mhm.
I think it really depends on the impact on the business scenario because we can think, for example, companies only have Black Friday once a year. If it's a bug that is impacting Black Friday, I can guarantee they will want it to get fixed. So it really
Yeah,
depends on the context, right?
depends the context, right? That's why you have legacy, and that's why several banks still using some legacy code, legacy framework, because sometimes it works, sometimes it's not worth enough change everything. We have more priorities and other points, and maybe in every 1 million of requests happen one bug.
Yeah.
So Rafa, that's amazing to have you here with us to talk about bugs and share your knowledge, share your experience with us. That was
Thanks.
an amazing conversation.
Thanks a lot. It's a great pleasure to be here. And again, thanks a lot for the invitation. It's always a pleasure and an honor to be here.
Rafa,
Oh,
thank you. I'll see you on the other side. And
Okay.
you who's at home watching us, thank you for being here with us today and expect us to be here again next week. See you. Bye bye.
Yeah. See you guys.
bye.
Uh,